thank you all for coming. We do appreciate you all being here. I think our last rate discussions we had in 2011, we had 4, 6, and 14 total people at the 3 meetings. So we're really happy that we've got a bunch of people here. And that rate filing was about almost 4 times larger than this particular rate change. All right, thank you all for coming. And so you know, is that we're all, almost every employee, except the employees that possibly work up in Kingman, all of us are members also. And so are the board of directors, they're also members. So none of us relish and like raising rates or changing rates at all. It's a very painful process, both the process itself, and it's full of lots of constraints as having to do with our regulators, the Arizona Corporation Commission, which is in Phoenix. They have a great number of rules for us to go through, and the templates and everything that we have to follow are pretty rigid. But the process of having to deal with our neighbors and our friends and our family and having to deal with the fact that our rates are going to change, that's also very difficult for us. My name is Tyler Carlson. I'm your Chief Executive Officer of Mohave Electric Cooperative. And yes, I do live in Bullhead City, and I am a member. Been a member and been here since 2008. A lot has changed in 70 years. We've been in business since 1946. We still strive to provide our members with the highest possible service with the lowest possible cost, consistent with sound business principles. We still embrace our commitment to community, and we still remain steadfast in our commitment to community. MEC, we're not for profit. Hopefully you do know that. Now I know that there are some of you that came from other cooperatives and you do understand that and know what that means. Our rates are covered the cost of doing our business. They're not marked up for shareholders or for profit. The board of directors themselves are all members. In fact, in June, they went through a process in which they were re-elected or elected to the board. And they are elected by the membership themselves. We look out for members, not for shareholders or stockholders, and we always are working hard to manage costs. Hopefully we'll show that to you as we go through this. This is an interesting graph, and if you watch our history, you'll see that we were formed in 1946, and you can see the relative costs of all of these and what's changed over the course of time. And this is our rate as proposed. So as you can see, we're talking about what, $7.20-some difference from in 70 years. So we would suggest that electricity is still a relatively good bargain. Hopefully you look at your bills, and I go through this because when I ask, do you all know what your purchase power adder is on your bill? Do you? Some of you do. Most of you don't. Most of you don't look at your bills. So I'm going to make you look at it right here. So this isn't your specific bill. It couldn't be. But if you look right here, this is a purchase power adjuster. It's been this way for a number of months. And it's a negative. So it's subtractive as far as your bill goes. The reason why that is that we have been able to exercise very well in the open market as well as our fuels, whether it be coal or natural gas. And when we are able to save money on our energy costs, we pass that on to you. It's a direct pass on to you. What is the purchase power adjuster? It's designed to recover the changing wholesale power market and transmission costs. An example of that is our transmission costs. One of our transmission providers has gone up 18% since 2011, our last rate filing. So we end up having to cut costs and absorb that into our mix. But what we're really being able to do is we're really capitalizing on the wholesale power market. This purchase power adjuster is required by the Arizona Corporation Commission. Every utility they have oversight over, we're all required to have a purchase power adjuster. It's only applied to energy costs. It's not applied to our operations. It's not applied to any loans. It's not applied to our fixed costs. Meaning principal and interest payments. And the idea is to help avoid frequent rate change applications, and they're very costly to the co-op. And when I say costly to the co-op, The last rate change that we did, we went through this, we used 2009 test year. And the way utility works is you have to use a test year, meaning you have to use an actual year of data and actual year of information. You're not allowed to actually project and say 10 years from now my costs will be. You have to use a particular year. We used a 2009 test year, and we had to go through a formal rate change. The reason why we did have to go through a formal rate change is we hadn't gone through a rate change previously since 1991. So we don't go through these very often. We try to avoid them, which separates us from investor-owned utilities. An investor-owned utility, when their costs go up, that's just the way it is, and they file a rate case. What we do is we look at our costs and try to adjust them to try to avoid filing rates. But that rate change, that rate application, costly for the co-op. Does anyone have an idea, other than employees, because they have heard me say this a million times, but anybody else know about how much our rate case cost us in 2011? There's a good indicator right there. Everyone should put your cell phones on stun.
I did.
I left mine in the car. There you go. Just to keep that. Does anyone have an idea what it cost us to go through our rate filing in 2011? Just an idea, anyone?
500,000?
500,000. That's a good guess. Almost $800,000 to go through a rate filing. 700 if you count our costs for consultants and everything else, the attorneys required to do it, it was about $750,000. You account for all the staff time, it was almost $796,000, almost $800,000. So we're trying to file this in an expedited rate filing. It didn't exist in 2011. It's a new rule that's come into play, which says that if you have a rate filing 6% or less, you can actually go through an expedited filing. We're trying to do that. Purchase power adjuster. This is the purchase power adjuster from 2008 to present. If you were here back in 2008, and actually I came here right here in 2008, in September of 2008 actually. I came here in 2008, and that's what the purchase power adjuster was, a plus 3.5 cents. So that little line, that purchase power adjuster after your cost, there was a plus $3.50 or 3.5 cents, but 3.5 cents onto your kilowatt hour charge. And that's where it's gone since then. This is when we actually, our present rates actually went into effect. We filed them in 2010. They went into effect in 2012. As you can see, it's not a very expedited process, which is one of the reasons why it costs so much. And then here's what's happened from the purchase power from there. So we've gone from a plus 3.5 cents to a minus 1.75 cents. Since 2011, actually in 2011 is when we started making investments, but remember it's a 2009 test year, so anything that happened after 2009, any of those investments were not in the rate. But we've invested over $38 million of investment in our infrastructure to try to reduce the number of outages as well as reduce the size of the outages. Today, our outages in numbers of people are a lot less when we do have an outage. Typically, unless someone hits a pole right out of a substation, which happened yesterday. When it hits a pole right out of a substation, a whole bunch of people are out. Not much we can do about that. And by the way, that pole wasn't in the road, it was off the road. So, since 2011, we've had over $85 million of total combined investment. We've been able to leverage our transmission providers to get them to invest in their part of the system. We also were able to get federal grants that we don't have to repay. We've done overhead system improvements. Hopefully you've seen some in your area. And if you haven't, we have been all over both our western service territory, which is Bullhead City all the way down through Fort Mohave, as well as our eastern service territory, which is east of Kingman, Peach Springs area, Hackberry. We've had overhead system improvements, underground system improvements, both cable cure improvements, in which we're trying to make old underground buried cable last longer. And when that doesn't work, then we're actually involved, we've been very active in replacing that underground conductor. And there are some areas that we focused on that are, we usually look at data and look at the number of outages, and that's where we focus our time. And we still have activity going on into 2016 and into 2017 with these particular programs. Steel poles for line hardening. You've probably seen steel or concrete poles up along our system. The idea for that is when we do get a wind shear, and we had one the other day, took down 10 poles. When we do have a wind shear, and people will tell, the meteorologists tell me, and I would tend to believe them, that wind shears at times are more potent than tornadoes, because a tornado is a specific wind that has the velocity doesn't change much. A wind shear goes from nothing to 80 miles an hour in a heartbeat. And so we have steel poles up in a number of places that have been hit previously. So if we have an area that gets hit with wind shears, we've been trying to put steel and concrete poles up, and they won't go over. What most would happen is, and unfortunately this does happen, there was a picture in the paper about somebody's carport was all wrapped up from the wind. If you don't secure those, they'll end up in our lines. And that'll tear down a line or damage a line. The steel poles and the concrete poles will be okay, the line won't be okay. But we're able to put the lines back up. And it's a lot quicker to put lines back up than try to put the poles back up. Pigeon and animal protection, lightning arresters. We did have a bunch of lightning arresters that for some reason, over time and in the heat and this, with all of the sun that we had, they were failing much quicker than it would be predicted. And so we went through a routine program to change out a whole bunch of, and most of all of our lightning arresters. Probably in 2009, 10, and 11, our most frequent outages was arresters. Now it's almost zero. So that we've been able to take care of that particular problem. Probably our largest, does anyone know what our largest number of outages come from? Pigeons. If you see anybody feeding the pigeons, please tell them to stop, because they're causing U-Haul outages. Now we have a lot of, we go through a lot of efforts putting on pigeon and animal protection on the lines, but they are not fail-safe. So we still have a great deal of, in fact, I think in April and May, 3 out of 4 outages were pigeon outages. So that's our biggest problem. And it's mostly after someone's fed them, that I know none of us do that, right? But somebody fed them, and then they flew up in the lines, and then they released what they ate. And when they release what they ate all over the arrestor or something, that causes a tracking to ground, and then you have a fault. That's what happens. So it's the pigeon guano, I guess one might say is what it is. Surface improvements, you've been asking, we've been listening, and it may not be you people exactly in the room, but we've invested in infrastructure and technology, enhanced communications throughout our system so we can tell where outages are. We don't end up driving people out to every location to try to search for them. The system tells us where the outages are. We have new meters that actually will communicate only their metering information, only the data, that metering information that we would read the meter on. That's the only information that's sent back to us. But we have meters that will send information back. And that information then is stored and used in our customer information system, which we have a new customer information system that now talks with our metering infrastructure system and our outage management system. So all of them talk together. So now we have historical data for you to look at. So if you want to get onto a new thing that we just recently got into play, which is Smart Hub, you can get on the Smart Hub and you can take a look at, you can compare your usage to temperature, usage to your history, usage to a year or two. But you can only go so far back, and the reason why you can only go a few years back is we just only put this in the last few years, so we only have a few years of data. Yes, sir?
Well, on the meters, they were talking about putting the new meters in.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys gotten out into Mohave yet, putting those new meters in?
Yeah, I think we've completed I think we're pretty much completed all of our deployment in the west end, which is this end. So yes, all those meters are in, and those meters are wired. They're not wireless meters, so if somebody's just worried about wireless emissions, those are wired meters. In fact, your old meters were wireless. These meters are not. If we come into a situation in which we're having trouble reading those, we might end up back with wireless meters, but that's just a situation of sometimes too many splices or too many, yeah, it should be rare that happens. Service improvements, you ask, we listen, our outage management system, we view both your your customer view of us. What do we do? What do you want to see from us do better? We also take a look at over the 900 co-ops that exist. So you all know, and you probably do, but co-ops serve over 75% of the land mass of the United States. A co-op of some type serves that. But we only serve 25% of the people because we serve in the rural areas. We don't serve in the urban areas. But when folks talk, what their most important issue is not their cost of power. Their most important issue they rate is how do you communicate with them on outages you're going to have or outages that you are having. So we really invested in our outage management system. And please, I mean, even if you're my neighbor, and I know when I drive home and there's an outage because the gates are open in my condo place, because the gates stay open when there's an outage. They have a battery in them and they open up once and they stay open. But when the gates are open, I know there's an outage. And everyone's going to come running out when they see my car, and they're going to ask me what happened. They're going to ask me how long it's going to be, and they're going to ask me, what are we doing about it? And here's the deal. It's a bad thing is to ask me, because I'm not going to ask the people who are out there working and stop them what they're doing and they're working to have to get back to me so I can get back to my neighbor. What I tell them is, I'm out just like you, and when it comes back, I'm just like you. I will figure it out when we come back. In fact, if you want to grab a beer and a lawn chair, I'll sit right out front here with you, and we'll wait. But I'm not. What we need you to do instead is this: is to dial our toll-free number, and please report your outage. You may think that someone else has reported your outage. You may say, I don't need to do this because someone else has reported it. And you know what? If there's an outage of 10 and all 10 of you do that, are we aware of your outage?
Absolutely.
We're not. We're not aware of your outage if all 10 of you say, no, somebody else is going to report it. We need all 10 of you to report that outage. And with the new data, our system data, if we don't get enough data, we could erroneously believe only one section's out, whereas more people are out. So please, call it up. And if you have your phone number in our system, it's a very easy process. It'll say, oh, we recognize that you're at this location. And are you reporting an outage? Yes. All right, an outage is occurring in your area, and we will get back to you. Do you want us to call you back when it's out? So it's a very easy process. If your number's not in our system, please consider adding it. It works very quickly. And truthfully, if you're trying to talk to someone, we don't have 100 people sitting there waiting for an outage so they can talk to folks. We have a few, and you could get into a real backlog, whereas this will not get into a backlog. And it'll report it, our system will take it, our system will know, and it'll get into our system. So please use that. Even if you know our board president, even if you're my neighbor, it's not going to help to talk to me. It's not going to help to call the board president. Board president's going to call me, and what am I going to tell you? I'm going to say, Lynn, you're going to wait just like the rest of us. We're all going to see what happens, and I don't have any more information than what I have.
And you don't have your own switch.
And I don't have my own switch, and I don't have a cerebral implant, so I can't tell what's happening out in the system. It's just not there. Outage Center on our website. We do have an outage center, so if you do go to our website, we have an outage center, you can click to it. You can click on the map, and when you click on the map, you can actually see outages in progress. So if you come home and you're wondering, your lights are out, and you're trying to figure it out, and you want to go to the website, you can go to the website, you can look and say, oh, I'm part of that outage, or I may be part of that outage.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
It's kind of a dumb question. If you say there's an outage, you go home, you got no power, how can you get on the computer?
Well, you can do it on your smartphone. There are people who can do it on their smartphone. There are people who do it on their tablets, and their tablets have a battery, so their battery is not there. So there's ways in which it happens. I know you think like me, because I'm an old timer right here, which I don't Twitter, and I don't Twittergram or any of that Insta Twitter or all that stuff. Insta face, page my face, or any of that. Mr. Hastings, yes sir.
The new meters.
Yes sir.
I thought that they communicated when there was a...
Yeah, the new meters. If you ask the meter, you have to go in and ask the meter if it's registering. Yeah, you have to actually kind of deploy and ask the meter.
Oh.
It's connected, so if you ping it, that's the right term. You ping the meter either comes back and says, I'm good, or you ping it and nothing happens. We can tell by doing that way, but we don't constantly just ping meters on a regular basis.
Well, I thought they threw something out at it.
No, they don't necessarily throw something out at us.
Oh,
Yes, you have to call. That's the point. Yes, go right back to that 2 slides ago. Go right to that slide. Please call. Mr. Hastings, please call. Smart Hub online. People ask for more and more abilities and different abilities to do their payment online. And so we have Smart Hub. And a Smart Hub is something you can get on your app on your phone. So you probably have it on your phone. And you can get it at your computer or your tablet. And you can do bill pay. You can outage report on there. So if you don't want to call, you can report your outage on Smart Hub. And actually on there too, you have a bunch of other things like this. You can take a look at your usage explorer. You can look at your usage versus month by month, go back to years. You can go against temperature. You can actually take a look at your usage, and these are tools to help you manage your usage. And there's a lot of people that believe we're only on the supply side, meaning that we only care about supplying electricity. We really do focus on the demand side as well. And the reason why we do that is the cheapest and cleanest kilowatt hour is the one you didn't use. So if you can save power, if you can save energy some way, shape, or form, it doesn't hurt our feelings at all. That's the cheapest, and that's the cleanest. That's the greenest, if you want to get to it. The greenest one is the one you didn't use. Period. No matter you want to talk solar, you want to talk wind, I don't care what you talk. That's the cleanest, the one you didn't use. This is self-service payments versus our office. This is since 2010 when we started implementing these things. You can see the self-service count going drastically down. The reason why they go up and down is really monthly bills. It's the types of bills, monthly bills. We'll look at how it's gone up from the self-service. That's what people were asking for. We put the infrastructure in to do that. So you ask, we listen, and we see the results. People are using it. Tools to help you, Together We Save. If you go to our website, you can find the Together We Save. And what that is a website that's designed for you to ask questions and interact with it. And it'll help you, point you towards energy efficiency programs. Also, we have a person here too that Steve Bowman. That's right, if he can stand. Steve Bowman's a great resource if you actually want Steve to come out to your place and take a look at it to help you, or just ask him questions. Mr. Bowman's a great resource, and you've used him in the past, right? Didn't you say you used him? And did it work well? Did it worth it? Yes, it was worth it. All right. So both online as well as in person, we have folks that'll help you with that.
You'll come to my house?
Go talk to him. Absolutely, as soon as it's done. Absolutely. If you have some wild dogs and such there, you might not. But now, and this is what we were looking at, and this is from 2004. As you can see, a steady increase, average monthly residential usage. This isn't the bill. This isn't the amount of your bill. This is just your usage in kilowatt hour. And we were seeing this, and what we went a hold of is grabbed a hold of that to see what we could do to move this down. This is a weather year. So I mean, you're going to have a odd weather year. But look at what's happening. So our investments in trying to, on this demand side, have impacted your usage quite a bit. And we're happy to see that. We're happy to see that folks are figuring out ways to save. That's the best way to address an issue having to do with if you have a problem or a concern with an increased bill, or if you have a problem or concern with an increased rate. This is the best place you can deal with it, is see what you can do to use less. All right, now I'm going to go through the rate analysis development activities in the STEP process. And it's a fairly rigorous process. It's defined by our Arizona Corporation Commission. It's defined by the people that regulate us. So the parameters of our rates and what our rates look like, even some of our rules and regulations, are set back in Phoenix by the people at Arizona Corporation Commission. What we first do is we first define our system revenue requirement. In this case, we were required to make a filing. So what happened in 2000, when we filed in 2010, the commission, and that group of staffers in their infinite wisdom said, well, you know what? You don't file enough and often enough, so we're going to make you file in 2016. Whether you need one or not, you have to file. You have to take 2015 data and you have to file in 2016. So the question about whether or not we have to file is not even a question. Now the question that we're dealing with is, do we file a full rate case that'll cost us between $750,000 and $800,000, or an expedited rate case which we believe will cost us less than $350,000. Still expensive, but it'll be less than half. So then we look at, do we need a rate increase, and if so, how much? We prepare a cost of service study. A cost of service study looks at all of the rate classes, and those rate classes are really our rate tariffs. Rate tariffs being commercial, rate tariffs being residential, being time of use. We take a look at all of those, and we look at how they're performing to how they were performing in 2009, because nothing stays the same. Whatever they look like in 2009, they don't act the same as today. And then in that cost of service study, we take a look at all of the dedicated service, we take a look at all the investments we've made, and where those investments were made. Were they made on the distribution side? Were they made specifically to customers or specifically to rate classes? And then we allocate those costs to every rate class. And we define the customer revenue requirement. The rate design determines how costs are recovered from the individual members. And it's basically an accounting. And it's done by the formula in which we put all our numbers through basically the formula that the Arizona Corporation Commission requires every electric utility to do. We don't make something up, out of our pockets, or we don't pull something out of our heads and make something up. We file the same deal. So we define the system revenue requirements. We need a rate increase of so how much. Now this is our rate projection 2017. This is our 2015 test year, but we projected to 2017. The reason why that is that we're filing the end of this month. And when we actually file, it'll take all the way into 2017 for the rate case to be done. It's a very bureaucratic, incredible, time-intensive process. But I want you to take note of here is non-labor, O&M, and labor and benefits. These are predominantly our controllable costs. This is the purchase power, which is about 73%. They are basically not controllable. It's what the market is, or it's what the fuel costs are for natural gas, or the fuel cost for coal. And there's our operating margins. We'll talk a little bit about operating margins in a bit. Depreciation, taxes, and interest. We don't have a lot of control over that. And we basically just end up having to respond to that. I point this to you because this represents 15%. That's an awful small amount if you looked at a electric utility operating cost. And having your purchase power, which is transmission and purchase power, be this much is what this really says is this is run very lean, and we believe we are run very lean. This is what it was back in 2009. Purchase power is 80%. Labor and benefits on non-labor O&M was 12% of that. So you might say, well, you went from 12 to 15. So did your costs go up? Not really. It's just that the pie got changed different. Oops, the pie is different. I got to back up. All right. The pie is different because this was a lot bigger. Now you can ask yourself, well, wait a minute, Carlson, it was $79 million 2009, and it's only $70 million in 2017. Right? So where's my portion of that? Well, your portion is in that minus 1.75 cents. You get that directly. On your bill, it's minus 1.75 cents. That's where that's taken up. Anything that affects this right here, and this being lower than the 80% from 8 years ago, basically, from a test year standpoint, that anything gets passed on to you. So you see the reflection of it going from a plus 3.5 cents to a minus 1.75 cents, and you would say that this should be smaller than it was in 2009. Does that make sense to y'all? All right, now a question we get a lot is what's in the customer charge? And is that a minimum fee? Is that a customer fee? It's not a customer fee. It's not the fee it costs you to be a customer. Some entities you have a customer fee. Some utilities you have a minimum. And that minimum is regardless if you use nothing, you still pay the minimum. But ours is called the customer charge. And it's common throughout all electric utilities. It's common throughout all utilities, period. I mean, both in my wastewater, my water, at my house in Bullhead, I never use more than the minimum. So, but I'm always paying the minimum. And oh, by the way, if help you understand what's in the kilowatt hour charge, it's not just the electric energy. It's not just what comes out of the generators, but you have to pay for the cost of maintaining the generators, the tax and insurance on the generator, the loans taken to build the generators, the loans taken to build the transmission lines. Because even if you buy from the market exists at some particular electrical location, you have to ship it in to our location. It just doesn't magically appear. And that capability has to be there, whether it's a beautiful 65-degree day or if it's 120 degrees. You expect when you come home and turn on that switch or that air conditioner to run even when 120 degrees, right? That expectation means we have to be there to provide it. So we have to have the capability to do that. Those are all costs that show up in the kilowatt hour charge on your electric bill.
The generating station that they had before there was.
Across the river?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Mohave generating station. You're going to ask if we took any of that?
Well, no, did that serve any part of Arizona, or did that serve just?
Mohave generating plant did serve some of the Phoenix metropolitan area because one of the customers was Salt River Project, but essentially served Southern Cal Edison is who it served the most. But SRP and Southern Cal Edison were two of the larger entities. There was multiple entities in that, and when they closed down, we didn't lose anything. In fact, we're not directly connected to it. California is connected directly to it, and there are some connections, transmission connections that go to Phoenix for SRP, and as well as through Nevada Power, NV Energy at this point now. The importance of considering components and expense of designing rates, and we did this in our last rate case, and I think it's really important for people to understand. Let's just picture this, and you have two homes, and I know this is not actually possible, although I have seen it pretty close, but you have two homes that are identical, and they're in the same subdivision. And you got two different sets of folks. You got a family of four. They're occupied full-time, meaning that one of the parental units are there, and there's a couple of kids there, and they're there 24/7. One of the other parental units goes out and works, comes back. You have usage there going on 24/7. All right? Then you have a family of two, same home, but the family of two is occupied part-time. Whether that is both people leave for 8 to 10 to 12 hours to work and they come back, or it's somebody that stays here for 6 months and leaves for 6 months. Whichever way, either way you look at it. And the customer-related cost of providing the service to both homes is identical. That customer charge, that fixed charge, is identical to both homes. And the way that it's worked over the years, and we're trying to break that, and this next rate filing should break that, is that in residential rates, some of the fixed costs have been hidden in the energy portion. They've been stuck in the energy portion. That's been a rate design that's been here for a long, long time. And that rate design is somewhat broken. So what was happening is that since some of the fixed costs were in the energy side, this person who used more energy was paying more fixed costs than this person who was not. But the fixed cost of service were the same. So one of the things we're doing is we're trying to pull out, and we did it in the last rate filing, to pull out some of the fixed costs. We're trying to pull out the rest. So the two things that are happening right now, and this is the major change, and we're focusing on residential here, because most of our members are residential. Almost all of them. In fact, even if you have a business, you're probably residential also. Probably have both. Most of our membership is residential. So that's most of the discussion tonight. Although we do have the data, if you want to ask specifically, we can get with you at some particular point later and go through the data having to do other rate filings. But the customer-related cost of providing service today is $16.50. In 2017 is $18.75, because we're pulling some of those fixed costs out of the energy charge, and we have to repay the $38 million we've invested since 2011, right? I mean, we made that investment, we borrowed the money, we have to do that, somebody has to pay for it, it's the members themselves that end up paying for that. So that's what we're actually doing. The importance of a cost of service is defensible to members, meets commission requirements, meaning it's defensible, meaning all members in the same rate class pay the same. There isn't anybody that gets a special rate. So Tyler Carlson in his condo association pays the same as anybody else in my condo association. Produces reproducible results because of consistent methodology, and it also tracks changes in the system ahead of the study approach. It's financially sound, balance the needs of the cooperative against the member impact. It's non-discriminatory and fair. And you can say what fair means. Fair means a whole bunch of things to different people. What we mean fair is everyone's treated equitable. The importance of the cost of service streamline process, when they approved our last rate change, 2012, remember we filed in 2010, we went through these processes in 2011, they approved our rate change in 2012, they required us to file a rate application in 2016. In 2012, there wasn't a streamlined filing available. We think that our position was that since if the streamline was available at the time, you would have allowed us to do it, but it wasn't available. And so we wanted to file a streamline case. Well, you don't just get to go to the commission and say, hey, King's X, I think I just want to file a streamline. You have no problem with that? Yeah, they do. You have to prove to them that you're able to meet the requirements of streamline. So you have to do a cost of service study. Even if I went to the commissioners today and the commission staff and said, you know what, I don't even think I need to file a rate filing, because at 1.26% rate filing, I could stave off for a couple of years. If I did do that, do you think they would let me just say those words? Or would I have to prove it to them? I'd have to prove it to them. So that's what we ended up doing. So we went and proved it with a cost of service study to justify the data that we could go from a full rate case filing to a streamlined filing. And that cost of service study is necessary either way. And there's the cost of the rate case. That's the actual consultant and attorney's cost. Our time is not in that. Like I said, if you put our time in there, it comes close to $800,000. We think it's going to be less than that by filing an expedited rate case. Factors that establish the margin requirement, financial ratio objectives are probably the biggest one. What does that mean to you? What that means is that we get very good interest rates on our loans for equipment and everything else. We get great interest rates, and you got to think about it this way. You know, we store a whole bunch of poles. We store a whole bunch of. We have a large inventory of transformers, large inventory of arresters, and we end up borrowing money to buy that. And you want us to do it at the lowest cost interest rates possible, right? Any business would want that. So that's what we do. The lowest price interest rate we get is through the federal government. And that federal government, they have a specific set of rules. With the bureaucracy comes the rules. And those rules are you have to meet certain equity requirements. It's a lot, and what it would be akin to is that if you went off and borrowed money to build a house, and the mortgager said, you know what, I'll give you less than prime. I will give you, I know everyone else is paying 4%, but I'll loan you at 3%. But the catch is every year you have to prove that you're creditworthy. Every year you have to prove it to me that you're creditworthy. Well, that's what we do. Every year we have to prove that we're still creditworthy. So our financial ratio objectives are primary. That's primary on our financial objectives is a ratio objective to make sure that we can borrow at the lowest interest rate possible. If we don't meet those financial requirements, what happens? We then have to borrow at higher interest rates, or have to go out to the market to borrow. And who does that affect? All of us, if we have to borrow at higher interest rate. Step 2, we define the class revenue requirements. We use the cost of service study to do that. We separate the customers into electric rate classes, develop allocation factors that reflect how the costs are incurred, typically based on the customer served, capacity or demand, energy kilowatt hours, direct assignments. Direct assignments are if there's a Walmart or somebody that goes in, that might be a unique customer class that has some direct cost assigned to them, meaning that we wouldn't be typically dealing with that. So we assign those costs, allocate the plant investment to each rate class, and operating expenses follow the plant allocation. This one I think it's a little bit hard to read. Sorry about that. But what this says is this is our 2015 test year. And the operating revenues of almost $0.5 million. This is the adjusted test year, which everything we adjusted was negative. So what happened was when we went to the board of directors and said, hey, this is what the cost of service study said, and the cost of service study says it should be about a 2%, a little more than 2% rate increase. And they said, no. They said, cut, get in there, and do something with this to make it less. So we did. So we went in and cut. So we basically, our adjusted test year comes out to be, as you can see, most of these are cuts, some of these are adjustments. But we went in and adjusted the test year, which is then what 2017 rates are based on. And we determined a rate class revenue requirement. And this is the bottom line. So every rate class is shown here. And each rate class either is performing like they did in 2009 or not like they did, or we've invested more specifically for them. And this is our change. We call it, we have it in yellow, the change in percent. That is yellow, right? Or is that orange? Is that yellow? I'm color deficient, so I'm always guessing. So the base rate change is the way the commission calculates it. They calculate it different than we do. We calculate it on, here's what our customers or our members would see. They calculate it on what your base rate change was. So they calculate it differently. So when you see, and if you've seen, how many of you have seen the announcement that went out from the commission that was all mailed out? Has it gone out yet? It's going out tomorrow. All right, you'll see that this the announcement for this rate change. It's going to start coming out tomorrow, and all these numbers will show like this. And that is the way the commission looks at it. It's a 1.26% rate increase. We believe it's a 1.41% rate increase. That's the way we see it. Residential is going up 1.59%. You can see all the numbers here. And the reason why they're all different is because they've all performed differently, and expenses were allocated different, or more expenses were allocated to some parts than others since 2009. It's different today than it is in 2009. 2015 is different. A change in percent includes PP&A. This is the change. Now, one of the things that we want to talk about, because this is a question you'll ask, is your PP&A number, that minus 1.75 cents. If that number is still in play when whatever that number is, and we think it'll still be minus 1.75 cents when this goes into play next year, that number stays the number it was before the rate change, and the number after the rate change, it'll stay the same number. That doesn't change. So you're still looking at them still minus 1.75 cents. If it changed, if the rate change was able to just wave our wand and boom, it changed, and all these went into play, the PP&A would still be a minus 1.75 cents. Does that make sense to y'all? All right, this is the purchase power. This is basically when you look at your bill and you look at the kilowatt hour charge or what's in there, the fixed capacity, our fixed costs represent about 5 cents per kilowatt hour, energy about 32 cents. Our particular cost is that 1.5 cents. There's a customer charge right there of $18.75 per month. That's what we're intending to go to. You may ask, what is it in other places? Unisource, they still have all of their fixed costs right now still hidden in their energy costs. So it's still stuck in their energy costs. You can't see it as readily. Navapache, it's another co-op here, is 22.17. That's their existing. They're going up from there. This is Sulphur Springs. They're going up to this particular number, 25.36. That's Trico, another co-op. And there's SRP at 20. Having been an SRP customer, the $20 customer service charge is not their fully allocated cost of service, meaning they still have energy costs hidden, or fixed costs hidden in their energy. If they could get their full cost, it would be some close to 30. This is our total cost, $18.75. That is it. All of our costs are in the fixed costs. We have no more fixed costs that are sitting in the energy cost. We've completed that. We've completed the decoupling of the energy from the fixed cost from the energy. And you may ask, why is that? Why did they do that? Has anybody got that burning question in their head? Why did they do that? It certainly wasn't you, Tyler. You came here in 2008, so you didn't do that. So who did that and why? Is that a question anyone wants to know? Or you don't care? What's that?
Go for it.
All right. The reason why it was done years and years ago, and it's been a traditional rate making for a number of years. The reason why they did that is the concept was is that if you put some fixed charges in the energy side, what they assumed were lower income people would use less energy, higher income people would use more energy, so higher income people would pay a disproportionate share of the fixed cost. They were shifting from lower income to higher income. That was the concept, that was the idea. And that worked out well for a while until you started getting to a number of things like ultra high efficiency air conditioning, high efficiency refrigerators, that type of thing. Who can afford those? The lower income or the higher income? The higher income, the more affluent people are able to afford that. So they're able to then bring down their costs. Who can afford an LED light? The higher income or lower income? Higher. So what's happening is the higher income had more, all of a sudden, in the last 10 or 15 years, because of technology, they've had more access to lowering their costs and lowering their bills. The lower income did not. And so what was happening is that whole theory that's been working for 50 or 70 years is turned on its head because of technology. So instead, what we're trying to do is say, forget all of that subsidization. Let's not do that, because who knows in another 10 or 20 years if it's going to turn away another time. Let's just have everyone pay their fair share. Everyone pays their fair share, and then you pay for your energy rate, and you don't worry about whether or not you're subsidizing somebody else or somebody else is subsidizing you. You don't have to worry about that because you're paying your energy rate for exactly what you're using. And that's our existing residential customer charge, and that's our proposed charge. And as you look here, our average is 879 kilowatt hour average. Use average, that's a monthly average. If you look at that, the actual bill will go up $1.48. That's how much your residential bill will go up with this cost. Now, if you use zero, yours goes up $2.25. But what I will point you to is because you probably and you say, Tyler, you took fixed costs out of the energy rate, so what should happen to the energy side? It goes down. And it does go down. And predominantly, this hiding of the fixed cost and energy rate was a residential phenomenon. So that's what we did. The energy rates will all go down. So what happens is if you're using a larger amount, if you're using, like I said, it's $2.25 for zero, it's $1.48 if you're using the average. It's because your energy side has gone down. So we pulled it out, so you will see a lower energy charge, but you do see a higher customer charge. But everyone is paying their share at this point. All right, that's all I have to present. No. And if we did, we'd have CFL bulbs. We don't have the LED bulbs because we have an abundance of those, and we'd be giving them away until we're done with those. Then we'll eventually go to LED lights. And we'll be having LED lights at some particular time. Any questions? Was this helpful?
Very, very.
All right, yes?
Yeah, I have a question. I own a small business, a hair salon, one hairstylist and one nail tech, 400 square feet. And I would like to ask how to get the electric company to give small businesses like myself on the budget plan. My business goes down in the summertime when all the snowbirds leave,
Right.
like a lot of other small businesses, and my electric rates go up.
Right.
My electric bill in the summertime is around $200, and my electric bill in the wintertime is about $40.
All right,
More
I think
income in the winter.
yeah, and I think I understand your question. Does everyone understand the question? If you're residential, you get the opportunity to do budget billing.
Yes.
Now, I don't do budget billing. The reason why I don't as a residential person is that I want to see what my bill is every month and then pay that. But there are some people who want to do budget billing, want to use the last year's, and then they just pay that amount, and they sometimes get to the end of the year and they go, hey, I got a credit, or ooh, I did get a credit, I have to pay some. But your question is on can we extend the budget billing for people like commercial? And the answer I would give you is, in this filing, we couldn't. No matter what, we couldn't. Even if we wanted to, even if I had an easy answer, we couldn't. Because in an expedited filing, and this is something we wrestled with inside, because there's a few tweaks we'd like to make ourselves. One of the things that we'd like to do is we'd like to extend our prepayment option to small commercial. We think that'd be a great idea, but we can't do it. In an expedited filing, you can't change any of your rate classes, you can't add any, you can't add any tariffs, you can't subtract any, you can't change any of your basic rules and regulations. All you can do is just change your rate. So even if we wanted to, we would have to spend, we'd have to go after it and spend the whole $750,000 just to change that. And I know, you know, we're not trying to minimize your question, and we know it's important to you. There's two parts to that question. One is I can't right now, in this filing I couldn't. I'd have to file a full filing to do that. And I think you would agree that the other $400,000 is hard for us to justify to solve that one problem. And we have,
But it's not just me. There are
No.
lots of small businesses that have, you know, two
Absolutely.
to five employees.
Yes.
And it hurts us.
Yeah, we recognize that. Now, the other part is that if there's a demand component involved, that's really hard for us to do budget billing if there's a demand component with your commercial. And there are small commercials that have a demand component, so it's not just the energy side. But you can do it. And I think that you can do it, but you can't do it with the electric company is not going to be able to do it. But if you walked in and said, what were my bills last year? And you could get them, a tally up of your bills. And then what you could do for yourself is you could start off in the winter
I have done that.
and just save the difference between the bill and put it into account. And when the summer comes, you pay that difference. So you do your own budget billing.
I've just started paying $100 a month in like March.
Yeah.
Instead of the 40, I go ahead and pay it.
So you could do that. You could do that with your own budget if you wanted to. We just can't at this point create a scenario for you. We're not trying to say it's not an issue, because we do know there's a couple of other issues out there we'd like to solve, but they're so small. When you say, do we want to solve that for $400,000? That's the question I was asked. Do we want to solve that for $400,000? And the answer typically is no. But there is a way for you to do that. You'd have to do it yourself. There's a way for you to actually handle that same thing.